Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Berry. I'm the Executive Director of WASPO, and welcome to our first sort of lunch and learn transportation tidbits webinar. It's okay during the course of this meeting, if you're eating lunch, to go ahead and turn off your camera and turn off your sound. This kind of goes with the format. I want to thank the WASPO Transportation Committee, who has been trying to brainstorm how to reach our business office colleagues, our transportation colleagues, who are super busy and don't necessarily have the time or the opportunity to go to a full day or 2-day conference somewhere in the state. So I think we all know that getting the right information at the right time can make a great difference, and finding a way to do that that's easy and convenient for all of you is really what the goal of this is all about. So in honor of the fact that next week begins School Bus Safety Week, we welcome you to this first webinar. And so with that brief introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Rhonda Page. Rhonda is the Business Services Manager for the Sun Prairie Area School District. Rhonda has also been the long-serving chair of WASPO's Transportation Committee and a real advocate for best practices in school bus transportation. So with that, I will turn it over to Rhonda. Hi, Rhonda.
Hey, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining our first Transportation Tidbits professional development. I just have a few housekeeping items to get us started. Today's presentation will be recorded and will be posted on Monday. So you can access the recording at any time by logging into your WASPO profile. If you have any questions, please raise your hand using the Reactions tab at the bottom of your screen. You may have to hover for it to show up. But WASPO staff will monitor for this and we'll call you when we can. There's like a pause or when we can answer your question. And you can also add information to the chat, and those questions and comments will be monitored as well. Please make sure you mute yourself when you're not speaking to avoid any background noise. And then watch for an email this afternoon with a link to evaluate today's transportation tidbit section. And we really want your feedback and to help us plan future sessions and future topics. So I'll move on. I'm going to introduce our first speaker. His name is Kevin Miller. Kevin is the Director of Education and Government Practice, Partner and Senior Accountant Executive at M3 Insurance, specializing in property, liability, and workers' compensation coverages for education and government entities. He helps clients analyze their risk as well as design and implement their risk management programs. He's been an insurance broker since 1999 and obtained his certified insurance counselor, certified school risk manager, and associated in risk management public entities. Wow, this is a mouthful, and certified school safety coordinator designations. Hopefully I got those all right. He completed his Bachelor of Arts at Carthage College and his Master's of Business Administration at Marquette. He is also one of the Wisconsin instructors for the CSRM courses and a frequent presenter at WASPO conferences. So thank you, Kevin, for joining us, and we'll allow you to do your presentation.
Geez, Kevin, it's a good thing you don't have more certificates, or we'd never get this program started.
Well, I was just going to say, she just took away like 5 minutes of my presentation. We're going to get done early now.
Yeah.
No, great. Thank you so much, Rhonda. And, excited to kind of kick off the transportation tidbits here. And for those that have frequently or attended these our previous conferences in the past, that we've done this topic before, right? Why are we doing it again? It just continues to come up, and we continue to find that districts are facing different challenges, and we're finding that districts are coming up with new ways to do things as well. So today I kind of want to hit on, and just to make sure you're seeing my screen, right? Perfect. Thank you. So want to hit on the issues. I think we kind of all know those issues already. I'm going to hit on some risk management reminders when we talk about large vans and transporting students other than just in a bus. So there are specific federal and state guidelines we're going to touch on there. And then I know that a lot of districts are using personal vehicles to transport, whether that's parents or teachers or whomever can get kids to where they need to be for whatever event they need to attend. When you do that, there is a specific state statute regarding the driver of that vehicle and kind of some requirements around that. So we just want to review that again. And really at the end, this is a warning for audience participation. So I know these webinars, you're all just going to sit there with the camera off and listen to me maybe and do some emails. But really, we do want everyone to kind of talk a little bit here at the end. What are you doing in your district? What's working? What's not working? What have you tried? What problems you're running into? So we do kind of want to end a little bit with a roundtable, and we'll kind of kick that off once we kind of go through what we've seen from other districts across the state. So why are we here? Bus driver shortage. I think that's probably one of the #1 things that we've realized that we all know. Very difficult to find bus drivers. We all have more athletic teams. So our schools have additional teams when you think of lacrosse and rugby and field hockey and what was the other one I was thinking of? All of the new sports that we're seeing pop up, right? That generates a need for additional bus drivers or transportation of students to different events. Oh, and bus driver shortage. I'm not sure I mentioned that one. And then more clubs and organizations. So when you think of all the clubs that are part of schools now, continuing to create new clubs that end up in field trips or additional events or competitions that they may be participating in, again, putting more strain on the needs for all the extracurricular activities. Oh, and did I mention bus driver shortage? I think that's pretty clear, right? So pretty much, I think everybody knows why we're in this situation. So when you don't have a bus, the next thing becomes, all right, let's grab a van. Can we get a van and put as many kids as we can in a van? And the thought is, let's get a 15-passenger van. And I can tell you every year I get calls from districts that say, hey, we were at the track meet this last week and, you know, so-and-so school district have a 15-passenger van. Why can't we have a 15-passenger van? So here are the reasons for potentially not having a 15-passenger van, okay? So when you look at those larger vans, we're going to look at those 10-passenger vans. And one of the things that is becoming an even bigger issue is Ford has stopped making their 10-passenger van. So it's interesting to see, or it's something to keep in your mind on what it's going to look like in the future if these federal and state regulations are going to change. If we see the auto manufacturers not even offering a 10-passenger vehicle anymore. I had heard this from several different contacts recently that 10-passenger van's not even available. So I went on Ford's website and tried to build one, and they only offer a 14 and a 15-passenger option in the 2023 transit vans. So as we move forward, that could become a new issue that we have to address as well. So this first piece is NHTSA, right? So National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. And the restrictions here is the district cannot purchase or lease a 15-passenger van unless it meets all the requirements of a school bus. And then we get those specific, let me go back. We get those specific requirements for yellow paint, reflective tape, the stop arm, the flashing lights. All of those would have to be on your 15-passenger van. And then it's just not going to make sense to have that van with if you were to actually add all of those safety features to that van, right? So this also comes from the Safe, Accountable, Flexible, Efficient Transportation Equity Act, a little similar to my designations, I guess. But again, this gets into the 15-passenger van. So what this does is it actually creates a penalty for the dealership. So if a dealership sells a school district a 15-passenger van specifically for the purpose of transporting students without the required safety features, they can be fined up to $10,000 and then up to $15 million for multiple violations. We find a lot of dealerships aren't aware of that requirement and they continue to sell them. Have we ever seen this implemented? I've not seen this implemented or enforced on a dealership before, but know that it's out there in a specific act. The other thing that's interesting here is the definition under this specific equity act. So it says 15-passenger van, but they define that as anything that seats 10 to 14 passengers, not including the driver. So even though it refers to 15 passenger van or vehicle in the actual act itself, the way they define 15 passenger is 10 or more. Okay, so this gets us back to the 10 person or 10 passenger piece. So that's the federal side. So when we move over to the Wisconsin, the DOT side, so state, so now we're looking at the state regulations or guidelines. It's motor vehicle, which carries 10 or more passengers, again, for the purpose of transporting students. So they're recommending avoiding the use of a van able to hold 11 or more passengers. So this DOT requirement from Wisconsin is based off of the federal guidelines. Then to follow that is the Wisconsin State Statute 121.555. Okay. This is the one that adds the specific restrictions or requirements anytime you're going to transport students in something other than a bus. So it's alternate vehicle transportation, student transportation, and then it's got specific requirements within that statute for the vehicle itself and then for the driver as well. So what are the issues with the large vans? So why do all of these restrictions, guidelines, regulations exist? So these vehicles themselves have a higher center of gravity, which leads to the higher tendency to potentially roll over. So initially, when you think of a cargo van, these were built or created to ship more cargo, right? Stuff in a van and we can get it to where it needs to be. Then it turned into, hey, why don't we put some people in these things? And then we started putting seats in them. So the big flat sides of those vehicles, the structural rigidity really leads for them to have a higher tendency to roll over with the wheelbase as well. Now, if you talk to some of the professionals in the design and engineering world, the new Ford Transits supposedly address a lot of these issues, and they're much safer than the old vans that were the 12, 15 passenger vans. So the newer technology is doing better with these things, but still, when you think of that bigger vehicle and a crosswind hitting it, it definitely can have some impact on the way that vehicle handles while on the road. The NHTSA, so that's the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. So their study found that 15 passenger vans, 75% of them had improperly inflated tires. So what happens with that is it, again, impacts handling performance of that vehicle and can lead to rollovers. And then the seating configurations as well. So if you think of if everyone's probably gotten in a multi-passenger van, the 12, 15, 10, something to that effect, the door is usually on the right-hand side. You open the door and then there's a bunch of seating on the back left side of the vehicle. So we also put a whole bunch of the weight inside the vehicle on that back left tire, which again is going to promote tough handling and potential rollover with where we're putting or how we're moving that center of gravity with the weight in the vehicle as well. I went back and forth if I was going to put this in here or not. So there was a van crash in Milwaukee yesterday. So this was a Ford Transit. I don't know if it was a Ford Transit. This was a transit van, according to the articles, that flipped over, rolled in Milwaukee and caught on fire. It was not students. There were some fatalities in this accident, but the reason I put this in here was just to show you that these things are happening and these things do continue to roll over, and they can be pretty horrific crashes. So if you're going to use that 10 passenger van, you have that 10 passenger van, or if your district has a 12 or 15 passenger van, what should you be doing? One of the things I didn't put on here right away that I just hit on or was about to hit on the previous slide was we have a 12 passenger van, but you know what? We're going to take out a row of seats. Sorry, I just saw a chat come up. Okay, so if you're going to take out a row of seats, that doesn't make it okay because it doesn't change the structure of the vehicle. So the rollover tendency of those vehicles will increase when you take out the seats and then depending on where you put the load. So if you take out a row of seats, so it's only a 10 passenger vehicle, the tendency then is where those seats aren't, we're going to fill it up with stuff. So we're going to put our suitcases back there. We're going to fill it up with all the football equipment or the golf clubs for whatever team we may be transporting. And that shifts a whole bunch of weight to the back of the vehicle, which again is going to impact the handling of that vehicle. Okay. So when you're thinking of these vans, make sure you're doing your regular maintenance. Every seat has to have a seat belt, or so you can't, no carrying extra people. Don't take a 10-passenger vehicle and squeeze 10 kids, 12, 15 kids in it because there's room for them. They've all got to have a seat. Properly inflated tires. So really it's a quick check before every trip. It's not too difficult to check the tires. Just check the air pressure, and if it needs it, either run it over to maintenance or run it over to a quick trip and get that free air. Don't overload the vehicle. That's where I was just talking about putting too much stuff in the back, packing things in under the seats, getting everything we can, because there's not a lot of storage in those vans sometimes. And nothing on the roof. So don't strap something down on top or add a cargo piece, a cargo roof rack. That's what I was trying to think of. Don't add a roof rack to anything that's going to, again, add additional weight to that vehicle. Be mindful of speed and road conditions. So those rollovers increase at speeds in speeds excess of 50 miles per hour. And then only qualified drivers. So think training experience, fully rested and alert, and then someone who's familiar with the handling of issues of those types of vehicles. Now, is there a specific training program for a large passenger vehicle? Probably not. But when you think of training of an experience, this kind of gets back to not having students drive vans for sure, right? We'd never get into that situation, but we're looking for people who have potentially more years of experience driving. And if you've got someone who has done, they were a semi-truck driver or a delivery driver, or anyone who's regularly driven those types of vehicles, would definitely be preferred over someone who's never stepped in the driver's seat of one of those vehicles. And then motor vehicle record checks. So hopefully everyone is doing motor vehicle record checks for anyone who is driving, or specifically anyone who's transporting students, or anyone who's driving on a regular basis for your school district, whether that's a school district vehicle or in some other capacity for the school district. You can do that motor vehicle record check through PARS. So Public Abstract Record System is a free access to public entities. So you can go on, you actually upload all of your drivers. And once you have all of your drivers in there, what the system will do is actually send you an email that says, hey, the driving record for Kevin Miller has changed. You go into the system, you can re-poll or get a new copy of their latest abstract, and it'll tell you what has happened with their driving record. So it's a really great way to be able to manage these things, so that if you have a driver who has ended up with a couple of OWIs or been in multiple accidents, that's someone that you don't want driving on school district business, or specifically transporting students. And think of this specifically as, so why do we care, right? Why do we have to do all of this work? You're really just trying to do the due diligence to protect the school district further. So this is a kind of that worst case scenario where if you have a driver who gets in an accident and maybe you have a couple of fatalities of students in that situation, and then we find out that that individual who was driving the vehicle has 10 speeding tickets in excess of 20 miles an hour over the speed limit. The lawyers are going to eat that up in the case for those fatalities, and the liability is going to be much, much greater and have a lot more impact if you were to had checked everything and excluded that driver from driving the vehicle. How often would we suggest we run those abstracts on our drivers? You should do it on all the new ones. So anytime you have a new driver, run that report. I think some districts do it every couple years, like kind of with the volunteer. So ideally, if you have them loaded into the system, it's going to tell you if anything changes on their abstract. So you don't have to run it every time, because you're going to get an alert that something has changed. So that's kind of the benefit of the system. And then another one here, will PARS let me know if my drivers need their physicals updated or need to retest for their CDL? It does not provide the expiration date on those CDL requirements, but it does just provide changes to their abstract. So let's see. Anybody else know how you get notified when their medical examinations are due for the CDL? Does anybody have any insight on that? Okay. So just to recap though too, for PARS, it is free. Now, I will tell you, I've had multiple districts tell me getting it set up is a nightmare. It's very challenging to get it set up. You usually have to call in to tell them that you're a public entity. They waive all the fees, then you get set up. Once you are set up, everyone tells me that it works very well. It's super slick. It's very useful. So just to give you some warning if you dive into this. Thanks for the chats. Keep those coming. So for the school board, so the transporting students, this is the statute 121.555. Okay. So it does specifically say that the school board must ensure compliance with the statute. Okay. There are specific required insurance coverage limits that are listed in the statute. It's basically minimum limits, nothing significant. It indicates there should be an annual inspection of the vehicle that complies with the DOT rules in a specific state statute. In most situations, what we've recommended for districts is just being able to do a visual inspection. You just want to make sure that the vehicle that you're using or that the individual is using is in good working condition. You don't want to go out there and have busted headlights and taillights that don't work and a door that's kind of hanging off, right? We want to make sure it's in a good working vehicle before students are transported in such vehicle. Then it includes these specific operator requirements. So you've got to have a Wisconsin driver's license or any other state, basically. You must be 18 years of age. And here are the two tricky ones. So sufficient sufficient use of hands and feet to operate brake and accelerator. Okay. So obviously, if you see the person, you're more than likely going to be able to tell if that is, if those capabilities are there. Okay. And then this medical opinion, it is specific to teaching staff. If this is a parent or a volunteer, you don't have to have this the medical part, but you can use the examination report used for school staff. So this only applies to school staff, but that you have a medical opinion that there's no mental or physical disability impacting them from operating a motor vehicle. And then the last requirement is just, again, that the number of passengers is limited to permanently mounted seats facing forward. Okay. All right, so here's where we start to have some audience participation. I'll kind of walk through these, but start thinking of what you're doing or what how you're doing it at your district and what you'd like to add to the conversation here. So school district vehicles, again, focus on nothing more than the 10-passenger van. If you can do minivans, that's great too. If you can get a hold of a whole bunch of 10-passenger vans, that's great. Carpools. If you're doing carpools, what we recommend from an insurance perspective is that you're doing them at arm's length. So ideally, we don't want the coach or the district coordinating that carpool, okay? So if as a coach, I tell 4 students to jump in the vehicle and meet us over at practice, that's going to potentially come back to the school district. If at the beginning of the season, we say to parents, hey parents, we don't have buses. We're going to need you to get your students, be responsible for getting your students to all of our practice and events and organize carpools. So we recommend you getting together and doing that on your own. So you're telling them that they need to do it, but you're not coordinating them. So do what you can to avoid actually planning the carpools. So if we have someone with a personal 15-passenger van, can we transport kids to events in that? Okay, so this is a great example here. So if the district coordinates that transportation in that vehicle, it becomes student transportation organized by the district, right? But if the families are coordinating a carpool and one of the families has a 15-passenger van and they can take the whole team somewhere, if the district hasn't coordinated that, right, it's kind of at arm's length. So we wouldn't anticipate you getting or the district being impacted or involved in that. But if you know there's a family in town with a 15-passenger van and you coordinate them picking up all the students, you're still going to fall under those statute restrictions. Okay. So it's the transportation that as a district that you are organizing. Personal vehicles, we've talked a lot about that already, but again, this could be teachers, this could be coaches, this could be volunteers, whether this is getting a student who may be farther away, a homeless student that you have to get to one of the buildings that's 30 minutes away. How do you get them there? Is there a teacher that lives there? We've had situations where the buses don't show up and we all just hop in vehicles and go, right? Those are some of the things that are actually happening. And what impact does that have on the district? It comes back to that liability side again. And this is probably a good time to mention, we're talking a whole bunch of risk management stuff here. From an insurance perspective, I'm going to say most, most of your insurance companies that you work with will not have an issue with a 15-passenger van. Okay. So if you have a 10, a 12, a 15-passenger van, if you have volunteers driving their cars on behalf of the school district's insurance would be excess in that capacity. If you have those 10, 12, 15-passenger vans, the insurance company more than likely will be able to insure it. So this doesn't become like this doesn't eliminate your insurance program, right? We're just trying to reduce or control the liability if something were to happen catastrophically that ends up in the courts and ends up being large dollar amounts against the school district. So that's the part we're trying to control, is that catastrophic event. Students drive themselves. Again, we would avoid this one from a risk management perspective. If you're allowing that, if you're coordinating that, definitely not the greatest situation. Again, if you're telling the team at the beginning of the season, or you're telling the club, hey, you are responsible for getting your child or themselves to all activities, events, practices, games, whatever it may be, and they choose to drive themselves, that's not on the school district, right? We just don't want to coordinate putting students in another student's car and getting them to an event. Coach has a Suburban. I know this is happening all the time. I've got kids in sports in districts, and I coach girls high school lacrosse. So we've had all kinds of issues with getting kids to events, and this happens more than we know. But definitely don't let this be a common practice. You don't want this to be the regular. I understand that things happen, but again, we want to try to avoid that the best we can. I had one district that wanted to borrow the church's bus, and actually, if you could get the church to let you use their bus with a driver, right? So they give you a driver and the bus. It's pretty much like using a bus company. They're going to have their own insurance. It actually would work out if this is a way to do it. But you probably don't, the church's insurance program probably wouldn't like the idea of them leasing out their bus with a driver in it. Rideshare taxi, I've heard districts using taxis to get people to and from places. Rideshare, I don't know, to me, it seems like a multi-million-dollar idea if Uber or Lyft could figure out how to legally pick up minors and take them places. I know a lot of parents that would appreciate that opportunity to have their kid at practice without having to leave work early. And then one of the things I've heard is changing start times. So I'm wondering if anybody on the phone has done this before, where you're actually changing start and end times for the school. So one of the issues is just the number of drivers. So if you can change start and end times, does that potentially change routes or reduce the number of routes to allow fewer drivers to get everyone to where they need to be? So wondering if anybody has insight on that. And then Bob was able to provide us some pictures of things that they're doing at Marshall. So this is, they've got a couple of 10-passenger vans. They've got them all kind of decked out in their logos and things. They look great. Bob did share an interesting point that one of these is a 2018 and one of these is a 2019. But one of them cost way more than the other one because of the change in the used car market. I thought that was interesting, but they look great. And then how are you actually doing that? So one of the ideas is just using a Google Calendar. So setting up a Google Calendar that specifically has a calendar for each of the vehicles. And then sports teams can send a request to that calendar. And then you kind of fill up that calendar and then the keys are managed within the office. I'm going to hop back here though. And this is where everyone's going to start talking a whole bunch and have some great ideas. Or you can put it in chat if you don't want to talk. We won't disclose your name if there's something you want to say that you're doing.
Kevin, I'll ask a question. Many of us let non-school age children ride on buses or to trips if a coach is bringing their, one of their children to a game. Is there any risk issues with that?
So it does come back to your response. When is the district responsible for that child, right? Most districts, do you guys have that the little slip you sign? So if your child's not going to go back on the bus from an event, that the parents have to have a form signed that says you're taking responsibility for them. Do you have that in place? That's the biggest thing, is just making sure that you're tracking that. I know people get pretty lax on that, where you just, hey, I'm here. Can I take my kid? Yeah, go ahead. The issue there is if the kid ever ends up where they're not supposed to end up, whether there's you don't know that there's an issue with a family member, or there's a dispute between parents from a custody perspective, and a parent takes that child, the district is responsible to get that child back to where they took them from. So if they came from the high school, we need to get them back to the high school, unless you have some permission slip confirming that the parents can take them. If they're going to transport both ways, really not an issue. They're taking responsibility from the beginning. And then when you receive that child at the event or game, right, you're going to take care of them while they're there. And then the parent would still have that responsibility to leave with them for the transportation home.
Kevin?
Anybody else? Yep, go ahead.
Oh, it looks like we do have a couple in the chat. One person says we do have boys and girls in a co-op program with a local district. And we have our kids leave our school at the same time, even though their practice times may be a bit different. So we only need to use one driver.
Okay.
So that's an interesting way to not have to book a second bus for, even though it's like two separate events.
Here, hold on, Caitlin. I want to follow up on that one. Is anybody running into issues with drivers running out of time as well? So there's only a certain number of hours they can work, right? So if they do the morning bus route and then are trying to do an evening event, is that causing issues for districts too?
Kevin, would not their downtime during the day negate the time restrictions?
See, that's why I was asking the question, because I wasn't positive if that downtime counted, because I actually thought that that clock counts even if you're not in your bus. Because what I had heard was like wrestling tournaments where you leave at 7 o'clock in the morning, but the tournament's not over till 5 o'clock at night. They were actually switching drivers in the middle of that tournament because it's beyond their allotted time that they're allowed to be there. So I was just wondering if people are running into that issue.
We got enough issues. We don't need that one surfacing too.
Right. I'll do the next one here, Caitlin. So we have a fleet of 8 to 10 passenger vans here. Vans are no longer being produced, with a big impact on our vehicle replacement plan in the future, though. So sorry, no microphone, no problem. Thank you for the info. It's something that we really, I think as a group are going to have to follow. I mean, if they're not even making the 10 passenger vans, you can't find a used one. It's months out if you do find one. And like Bob mentioned, if you do find one, you're paying way more for it than it's worth probably. So if the 10 passengers don't exist in any shape or form, that'll be really interesting. Or you're going to end up with, 10 minivans instead of a bunch of nice 10 passenger vans. And to me, I'd rather have one 10 passenger van on the road than two minivans on the road that are kind of following each other, right? Reduce the exposure, because then you're going to increase the problem of we need another driver to drive the other van when we don't have drivers anyway. So I think it just kind of continues to expand the problem. Another district said they've got two Suburbans besides the buses. As a larger district, they contract out all bus motor coach transport, rentals for only 10 passengers or less. We're finding success with having coaches, advisors working with the bus company to get their CDL to drive. Oh yeah, I've heard that one too. That's a great idea. So having your coaches actually go get their CDL, and the bus company will pay them to be the bus driver for their own event. That's probably not super popular, but I think that might become a normal occurrence, because I know a lot of coaches are super frustrated with it too. And I had one district administrator say they went and got their CDL. I can't remember who that was though.
Kevin, thanks so much for your patience, Shelley. I see that you have your hand up, so please feel free to unmute and share.
Yeah, actually more of a question, but I could follow up with some input as well. Kevin, you had mentioned students driving themselves, and again, don't coordinate, they can choose that. What about you? Because we've kind of gone through this waiver process where it's like, all right, getting parents permission to allow their students to drive themselves or drive someone else's. Should we be staying out of that completely?
If you are getting the permission and confirmation, that's fantastic. One of the reasons too on the students driving themselves is you don't always know where they are with their license. So if they're still under restrictions where they can't have more than one person in the car with them, that's not a family member, that causes a problem. So it's really hard to monitor that. If you can get parents to agree that, yep, you can transport my kid in any car, that's great. Because one of the things we're trying to avoid is a parent being able to say, I had no idea you were going to let my child drive in that car with Kevin Miller. That kid cannot drive at all, and I would have never let my kid go in that car. So we don't want that to happen if there had ever been an accident. So if you're proactively getting that permission to be able to do all the transportation you need, I think it puts you in a good position from a risk management perspective.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's good. It's Pewaukee, I think, that has the administrator that has his license. But one of our principals has their CDL and drives the bus after school to get his kiddos home sometimes when they're in a pinch. And our athletic director is about 18 hours away from getting his. So they're trying to get creative as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Did I have a question? Does this apply? Any of this info change for charter schools? It does not, that I'm aware of. So I would need to just double check everything. But this even applies to private schools. So it's any student transportation that's coordinated by, I can't remember the actual word that they use, but I'm confident or comfortable saying that the charter schools are included in this, but I'm not 100% positive. Somebody else, again, we got some more coaches, driving or sports they're involved in only. Yep, I think that exactly makes sense. Advertising to parents and requesting that they become a bus driver so that they can drive their child's team and get paid the entire time they watch the event. They have a couple parents starting that process. That's great. We utilize Suburbans, Traverses, multi-use school vehicles, the white bus that can transport up to 15 passenger. Yep. So again, if it is a bus, it can be 15 passenger if it's one of those buses. It's just those transit vans that are 15 passengers don't have the same safety features. So if you think of those like smaller buses that are 15 passenger, so long as it has all those safety features, it doesn't create an issue for you. This helps out greatly with smaller groups, implementing a training program with van driving segment to mandatory for staff using any of these options. If I could follow up on that one, where are you doing or how are you getting the training for those vans, just out of curiosity? And I'll just keep going here too. We've got Pewaukee High School and athletic director both have their CDLs. Menasha superintendent has his CDL, did the athletic events. Trying to push for coaches, assistants, and parents to get CDLs. Yep. And Safe Schools. So that training is coming from Safe Schools. So Safe Schools are Vector Solutions. That's great that there's a training program in there that you can use. So thanks for that. Okay, I do a ton of these webinars. That is like the most participation I've ever had. So on any of these things before. So I thank all of you greatly. I think I'm coming up on my time. Is that correct, Caitlin? I got 5.
Yeah,
So
if you want to go a little longer, that's just fine. And I see Jamie, you have your hand up. Feel free to unmute.
I just had a question and I may have missed it, so I apologize. So for the people who are trying to get coaches and parents and volunteers and everybody to get their CDLs, are they paying for it then as well?
Ooh. Is there a bus company online? I don't know if there is.
Sorry.
Yes, I'm from a bus company, Go Right Way.
Would you guys pay for them to get it?
So we pay them for the training. However, the CDL is actually theirs. So when they go to the DMV and actually get the CDL itself, they have to pay for that. But we will pay them for training and things like that.
Okay.
For the test, we'll pay them too. So.
Do you have any idea how much the license is?
Last time I checked, I think it was like $65.
Oh, okay. So it's not hundreds of dollars to get that.
Right. Correct.
Sarah,
Thank
I
you.
just had a follow-up question for him too. So you said you're from the bus company?
Yes, Go Right Way. Yes.
Okay. So as a bus
Oh, we
company,
trained the Pewaukee athletic director.
so you guys paid the school, then did you charge the school district? So like we as in like myself as the school district, would I be paying for it, or would you as the bus company take that charge?
No, we will give them the paid training. So we will take that charge on. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and to give
Thank
you
you.
insight on that, that's a little bit of an insurance issue there too. So if they're getting the CDL on your behalf, but they're still driving for the bus company, when they're driving, they actually become an employee of the bus company, because the bus company wants an employee driving their vehicle, not like some volunteer off the street. So the individual actually ends up with like workers' compensation and auto through the bus company. And then the district is paying the bus company for that transportation, right? So it's just kind of a limited employment situation.
This is Rhonda from Sun Prairie, and our coaches who become bus drivers, and we contract our transportation. So once they passed their written test, they need to show that they passed that. We, as the district, give them $500 stipend. Then they do all of the road testing with Cobeson, and during that time they get paid by Cobeson. I think it's a different rate than a full driver rate, but they get paid for all of their training time with Cobeson. And then they also qualify for a $1,500 sign-on bonus with Cobeson, and I can find that out if you want me to share that with you. It's a little bit different because they're only doing athletics. So I think they have to do so many activities, I don't know, 10 athletic trips, and then they get $500. And then when they do the next 10, they get another 500. And then they get the last 500 after their 30th trip. If you're interested in that, I can find out that information. So they do get a $500 bonus from the district, $1,500 sign-on bonus, kind of spread out from Cobeson, and then Cobeson pays all of their training time as well.
And Rhonda, is that $500 stipend annual? I'm so sorry, Kevin.
No, you're fine.
No, that is a one-time, once they, because it takes about, what is it? What they have to study and write past the, you guys know, I don't know, 10-part test. I don't know all of those details, but they have to pass that written learner's permit test. So it's a one-time flat fee once they pass that.
So we did have another question.
That makes them eligible to actually get they have their CDL then.
So anything we need to know if the district maintains a car for transporting students? Yeah, just make sure you're doing regular maintenance. So have a maintenance schedule for your vehicles so that you know that they're well maintained, and have somebody responsible for checking that. Somebody's asking to chat a little bit more about the management aspect of the Google Calendar. So anybody using anything other than the Google Calendar, and really all you're doing is you're setting up the car with an email address so that when someone has an event, you do a calendar invite, and then you invite that van or vehicle to the calendar event, and it will populate the calendar for the vehicle. So usually your IT team can set that up. Anybody else managing that differently?
It looks like in Oconomowoc, they're using their activity scheduler, our school, to schedule vans.
Okay.
Another district is using the TransFinder software with TripFinder. Someone else is using their routing software. Nice.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get through the rest of the chats here. This is great. Reedsburg just said they're paying for the CDL training and license. They have an on-staff trainer actually, and they're an approved DOT tester. Great. Lancaster's their own training site as well. They cover all the expenses. That's a good question. So do Reedsburg and Lancaster? Yeah, okay. They operate their own bus fleets. Okay. There was the R School, TransFinder, and Google Calendar. Any other questions? Well, as a presenter, thank you so much for your time and participation. That was great. Really, we do these for you so that you can learn from each other. And if anybody comes up with a great idea, that we're able to share that across the districts and be successful across the board. So thanks for your time and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Rhonda, would you like to introduce our next speaker?
Yes, welcome, Cherie. All right, so our final speaker of today's Transportation Tidbits is Cherie Hime. Cherie is the Executive Director of the Wisconsin School Bus Association and serves on WASBO's Transportation and Bus Safety Committee. Today, she will share the results of the most recent Stop Arm survey. Okay. I think you're muted, Cherie.
There it is. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I'm assuming I can share my presentation. Start sharing. Okay. Looks like you got a good group here. Good for you. It's awesome. So as Rhonda mentioned, I'm Cherie Hime. I'm with the Wisconsin School Bus Association. And with this year, we actually were able to participate in the nationwide illegal passing survey again that was held off for a couple of years. And so with that report, WASBO thought that it would be interesting to have this in their webinar. So I quick threw this together in the short time frame, and hopefully you'll find it informational, and feel free to ask me any questions. And I look forward to discussing more participation in the future, because this is a really critical survey for our work and getting the word out about this critical issue. First, I'm going to start with what is WSBA. The Wisconsin School Bus Association was founded in 1948, and their first mission statement item was to promote and encourage safety in school bus transportation in Wisconsin. And that includes working with the Departments of Transportation and Public Instruction to further the safety of the Wisconsin school bus industry. So that is our focus, is to ensure our kiddos get to school and home safe again. And that was the important part of this survey. Our membership consists of school bus contract companies, school districts, and suppliers to the industry. And next year, we are celebrating 75 years. Just some examples of the programs that we have put into place and are pretty proud of holding and just recognizing people in the school bus industry. We have our convention and trade show. It's always the third week of June. We have a safety competition, which is a driving event in Appleton every year. That's right after the convention. It improves driving skills, gives drivers an opportunity to not only drive a course, but also do a vehicle inspection, as well as the written test, which just ask them things that they're asked when they get their license. We have regional meetings at 5 locations around the state every March, and we have various topics and speakers that go with those meetings. We have our School Bus Driver Recognition Week, which is the second week in February every year, and we work with the governor's office to have a proclamation that you can use at your facilities. We look to have those hopefully by the end of the year, each year before the next February. We have our School Bus Excellence in Driving and Mechanics Awards that we give out to members of the association at the convention in June. And then this survey on stop arm violations, we hold this in May. We have an education scholarship that started last year, and we've given out 3 scholarships so far. And we have an Operation Safe Stop Week that we coordinate with Wisconsin State Patrol. It's always the last week of September. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And we also provide state and federal government representation. So as I mentioned, the nationwide illegal passing survey was paused in 2020 and 2021. And this year there were 34 states that participated. In the past, we've seen 39 or 40. The average pass rate out of those 34 states, illegal pass rate, is about 70% that we saw in the numbers of drivers who reported. Wisconsin members, as I mentioned, were requested to participate in May. There were 898 drivers who participated, and they observed 365 illegal passes in one day. So this is a one-day snapshot. We suggest a day. If that day doesn't work, they can pick any other day in the month. We just need that information in before the end of May so that they can start compiling those numbers on a nationwide status. The average passing rate is now at 40%, which is the highest number we've seen yet since we've started participating. So here I have a graph showing in 2017, when we started participating in the survey, we were at about 26%, then about 24, and then 25. So we're hovering around that 25% range. And we took a couple of years off, and now you can see we've shot up to almost 41%. That's an annual impact of 82,800 illegal passes in Wisconsin. That's 82,800 opportunities to injure a child. This is an issue that we need as an industry to address as a whole. And this goes beyond just the transportation side. All school districts should be concerned. Parents, everyone involved should be concerned. I recently listened to an STN podcast on September 20th, and School Bus Safety Company had done a study. Their speaker in that podcast said that within that study, 10% of the drivers out there just don't care if they pass a stop school bus. 45% are distracted. And believe it or not, 45% claim to not know they had to stop for a stop school bus with its red lights flashing. What's the law in Wisconsin? Motorists are required to stop at least 20 feet from a stop school bus that's displaying flashing red lights and a stop arm. And each time a motorist violates that school bus stop law, they're obviously creating a real hazard for students who are boarding or leaving the bus. Now, a law enforcement officer does not need to witness this violation. So if there's a school bus driver who reports it within 24 hours, the enforcement agency is able to give a ticket to the driver of a vehicle that they witnessed passing their bus, illegally passing. And then the fines right now in Wisconsin, they may be required to forfeit not less than 30 nor more than 300. So what can we do to help bring about awareness of this issue? Taken from the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. They have a website out there. And your first goal is to talk about education and awareness. School bus drivers in proper stopping procedures need to talk to them, as well as the law. Our school bus passengers, how to enter and exit the bus safely. So our students. And then motorists, obviously, on the law and the dangers of not obeying the law, such as citation, fines, their license, and injury to students. Our second goal is to do enforcement. So that would be increasing enforcement of your illegal passing law. That's a critical goal, and that's one item that we've been working on. Studies have shown that without the threat of enforcement and without the public actually seeing or hearing about the law being enforced, which includes prosecution and conviction, your program will have little, if any, impact. And ways to do it are the enforcement activities, education and awareness activities, and posting. I've added on here, posting in social networks, having media interviews, information to the teachers and parents and provided by the teachers and parents, as well as law enforcement. May have law enforcement come in and speak to your schools and community groups about safety and safety around the school bus. As I mentioned before, Wisconsin School Bus Association holds an Operation Safe Stop Week. This is the last week of September every year. We do it in coordination with Wisconsin State Patrol. And our goal is to proactively educate motorists about the dangers of passing the stop school bus. This year, we were able to give Wisconsin State Patrol 21 locations throughout the state. Of that, there were 2 citations noted and issued from those locations. And they would follow the buses throughout the week, in the various locations. And so the officers were reporting back as to what they had seen and following buses on their routes. Next week is the National School Bus Safety Week. So this is good timing for this presentation. There are opportunities to serve as reminders for the students, parents, teachers, the community to keep the school bus safe at the forefront. NAPT is the National Association of Pupil Transportation. They have tips available at their website. And then the NHTSA Preventing Illegal Passing Materials is available at this website. They have media promos, they have social media marketing, various downloads that you could take and display, and talk to the kids and parents, and just getting the word out and spreading the word about school bus safety. And we want to remember that it's a fact, the school bus is the safest way to travel to and from school. And the students are about 70 times more likely to get to school safely if they take the school bus instead of traveling by a car. So thank you for bringing attention to this critical safety issue. I've got my contact information here, and I believe WASBO has it as well. And I'm open to taking any questions.
Thank you so much, Cherie. I did have one person request that the link in your presentation on your last slide be shared in chat. Would you mind going back to that real quick?
Sure. See if I can grab it here.
There we go. Thank you.
No problem. There you go.
Thank you. Another district commented that they installed stop arm cameras on 3 of their 16 buses, which resulted in more than 200 citations over a 3-year period. Yikes.
Great. I know stop arm cameras are another way that school districts and contractors are working with law enforcement to help this problem, and it's another great way to, when you have that video and you can say, we saw you passing the school bus. Well, that wasn't me. I wasn't driving, or I didn't do that. And then you can show them the video, kind of humbles them and realizes that there's going to be more enforcement out there with that. So it does speak a lot to have those cameras on there and to be able to show that video.
Yes. Speaking of videos, I think we have one from Bob Cherie over at Marshall. If that's all right with you, we can let him show that real quick.
Yep.
So I'm going to show about 15, 20 seconds of a video. It's rather frightening, to be honest with you, because it's a near miss. And I would encourage the audience to look at both the right side of the bus where the driver is. You'll see the stop arm protruded, the red lights flashing, and a vehicle pass by there. But also watch the student getting off the bus, in particular the door side of the bus, as a vehicle tries to pass the bus on the right-hand side, narrowly missing the student. So is my video showing by chance?
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Okay. Let me click play and just watch this real quick. So watch the right side. You'll see vehicles pass with the stop arm protruded. There goes one. Now watch the girl getting off the bus. Here comes a van on the right side. Narrowly missing that student. Just really, so that occurred in the district back in March or April timeframe, so relatively recent. At the rate that that vehicle was passing, I don't have any confidence that that student would have lived if they were to have been impacted by that vehicle.
Bob, the reason we installed stop arm cameras is we had somebody pass us on the right and take part of the yellow 3-foot pole that sticks out, rip part of that off. So that's why we eventually went with the stop arm cameras.
Yeah. You know, Lynette's statement there, horrifying. You're exactly right. I mean, we saw that, we observed that video. I intentionally did not share that with the board because I didn't want it to be as public as, you know, public records would be, but I think this is a safe forum. So just sharing it with the participants today.
That is absolutely horrifying. But thank you for sharing. I think that absolutely drives home the information that Cherie just shared with all of us and what Brad had to say about the importance of that stop arm and people actually adhering to those laws. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for showing that video. I actually was going to pull one off of YouTube. I know it's been out there for quite a few years that people use a lot, and it was passing from the right as well, and also just missed another student. And it's scary. You get the most passes on the left. When they come on the right side there next to that door, there's no excuse for that. And we need to make our kids aware of how to be safe and look off the bus, because we can't trust traffic. And also the drivers, and obviously the teachers and the parents being more involved of school bus safety. Especially when we have at least drivers out there saying they don't care if they pass a stop school bus. So.
Well, thank you very much, Cherie. Rhonda, do you want to wrap us up for the day?
All right, thank you, everyone. It's so great to see so many people that have attended our first Transportation Tidbits session. Make sure you take a moment to complete the evaluation. That will be, are we going to put that in the chat? I think we're going to put the link in the chat, and you'll also receive it if you registered for this via email. In addition, a link to the recording will be sent early next week, and we hope to see you at our next session on December 6th. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Yes, thanks to our presenters, our attendees. Rhonda, thanks. Great wrap up. We're excited to be offering this new format. So thanks to our planning committee. I think this first Transportation Tidbits went really well. Thank you.